Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Overcomers with our amazing Dr. Christy. And Dr. Christy comes from us all the way from Illinois, and she is a holistic chiropractor, and she's going to share her tips on overcoming daily stresses of motherhood, because I don't know about you all, but motherhood has been awfully different since the pandemic. And I'm going to turn it over to my amazing friend, Dr. Christy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much, Dorothy, for having me. I'm happy to be here, and happy birthday. So hope everybody that's out there watching wishes you a beautiful day.
Well, I think half of Facebook has already. So I thank you, people. I am completely overwhelmed at the happy birthday messages. I love it, but I'm a little bit overwhelmed. So if I haven't gotten to you, I promise I've read them all, and I thank you. And I will, at this point, I don't know if I'll get back to you because it's just been so overwhelming, and I have 2 shows tonight. So, but I thank you for that. And so, Dr. Christy, tell us all about overcoming motherhood, because I need all the tips and strategies I can get.
All right, this is a real life show, right?
This is a live show.
This is a real life show. So, I'll be real here. I am no expert on this at all. In fact, I just had conversations one after another today. Today was a day. Today was a rough one. And let's just say motherhood is not for the faint of heart. It is not for those that, it's rough. And today was one of those ones for me. Let's just put it that way. As was last night. It never stops, you know? And it's one of those things that I was sharing with you the other day that, you know, you've had so many amazing people on your show just that have overcome cancer, have overcome abuse, and all these really, you know, tragic things, I would say. And I don't feel, I mean, I've had my share of crap in the past, right? You know, like I had several years where I really don't have actually many memories of childhood in certain years because I was bullied so much that I'm pretty sure my subconscious is like, nope, we're not going to remember this. And so I have a lot of those kinds of overcomer stories, but definitely nothing like really big. And so when you ask like what topic I could talk about, I'm like, I feel like anybody who is a parent and anybody who steps into that role, we're all overcoming that pretty much every single day, because let's just face it, we're humans raising humans, and there's no cookie cutter.
Shits.
Very much so. Very much so. I'm pretty sure that that is the definition of a 10-year-old. That's basically where I'm at right now. And
I feel your pain. Ours is 10 in September.
Mm-hmm, yeah, he turns 11 in September, or mine turns 11 in August. And so it's one of those things that I keep hoping the next stage will be better. And in some ways it is. There's no better or worse. I shouldn't even say that. There's no better or worse. It's just different. And there's different challenges and different uncertainties along the way. And we meet each one as they come. So I'm not sure what tips I'm going to provide today, quite honestly. But the biggest message that I really would love to get out there is that we're all in it together, because it's rough sometimes and it sucks sometimes. And, you know, we'll talk about the book stuff later, but one of the things that I've said in my book, and like I've started like coining this as a phrase that I've said several different times on different shows, that as far as parenthood and moms are concerned, we all used to have this village of support behind us every step of the way, right?
Absolutely.
And now we have this tendency to have this village of judgment where we all look at each other and think, oh, look what she's not doing right. Look what she's not doing right. We hear stories on the news about mothers and parents getting the cops called on them because they're letting their kids play outside unattended. It's like, instead of doing those things, why can't we just, you know, hang around a little bit more and just make sure that they're okay? Or go knock on the door and say, you know, I saw your 3-year-old walking down the street, you know, just FYI, not to get someone in trouble, not to harm somebody else, but just to support them. And exactly. I think we've lost a little bit of that.
Exactly. I just want to take a minute here to acknowledge our friend Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Hello. And yes, it's completely different. And I totally understand. We were going to go play goofy golfing on Friday. Long lineup. Next thing you know, this little kid walks out of the gate, and the highway is like not that far from the gate. And my husband was standing right there, and I ran back in. I said, did somebody lose a kid? And he goes, oh yeah. And he acted nonchalantly, which was fine, because he knew obviously where his kid about was. But then all of a sudden the kid bolted for the highway, and thank God that the father saw it, dropped everything, and went for him. And I was just like, my heart was in my throat. I was like, oh my gosh. But I would have been the first one to, not call the cops, but go help the father, because he's clearly, like, he had a stroller, he had the clubs, he had everything in his hands trying to do this. And you're right, for us to just judge somebody and say, oh, he's a bad father, well, that's bullshit, because obviously he's got his hands full. He's trying to take his kid out. I mean, we've been strapped in this pandemic for a year and a half, not being able to do anything, and now that the only thing open is golf, funny that is, but the only thing open is golf here in Ontario. We're all there at the same time, so we should all be there as a village, supporting and helping other parents instead of crapping all over them and judging them.
Yeah, absolutely. My mind goes to, I don't know if you remember, this happened in Florida, I want to say, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago now. There was a family who lost a little boy to like a crocodile or alligator accident. The boy was getting too close to the water, and literally the family lost their child to an alligator. I can't remember the details. An accident that he was too close to the water in precarious areas, and the amount of shaming and guilt and like just cruel, mean things that people were saying about these parents. I'm like, first off, this could have happened to anybody.
Exactly.
Anybody.
Yeah.
And this family just lost their child. You're really going to say these things in their time of loss and grieving right now? Like, it floored me.
Jen agrees that's horrible. That is horrible, and I think sometimes we could be quick to judge, but we really need to put ourselves into other people's shoes. It's quick and easy to say something like, oh, I would have done this, I would have done that, but you never know, because you've never walked in that person's shoes, and that is horrible. We don't know the details, but could you imagine seeing your child being eaten by an alligator? That would be horrific.
No, I can't
That would
imagine
be traumatizing.
that. No, can't at all. You know what? I will remember, over a decade ago, before I had children, in fact, my cousin who had 2 boys, and now she has a girl as well now. But her 3 kids are like 5 years on average older than mine, and so they're all like a little stage or so ahead of them. And I remember growing up seeing her 2 boys interacting at family gatherings and this and that, and I was like, oh, they were wild. They were crazy, wild boys. They would always wrestle and run around, and it was insanity. And I remember at the time before I had kids, like, oh, I can't imagine like why she lets her kids do all that. And now I'm like, why would I have judged? Because I had no freaking idea what was going on there. And now that I've got my own, nope, absolutely not. And so I feel like occasionally, even myself included, we have this tendency to judge when we just don't know. Mm-hmm. And when we actually can step into the other person's shoes, it's a very different story.
Exactly. And Jen agrees.
Yes.
No judgment. No judgment zone here on this show, no matter what is said.
Great. Oh, well, I'm in the right place.
No matter what is said. And I have to put Dr. Christy at ease, because she's like, I haven't overcome this or that. I feel like I don't know what I have to contribute. And I'm like, woman, you have overcome parenthood daily. That right there is a major challenge. And those of us that have faced other things, I mean, on top of parenthood, that's just like, we all win a gold medal for parenthood for being in that arena, and you have a lot to contribute. Some of the things that we've had in earlier conversations, which was like shocking to me, was because you are a holistic chiropractor, but you had also said that how a mother feels when the baby is in the womb also affects how the child is. And I was just like, seriously? And I'm like, well, how would I know? Like, I don't know what my mom thought when she was pregnant. And yes, I could have had that conversation with my mother. And there's some conversations that are easier to deal with, to have with your parents, and some that aren't. But you made me think about that when you said that to me. And I know it's been a while ago, but I was just like, how can that affect, like, the thoughts that you think when you're pregnant? How can that affect your children later on?
Such a loaded question, Dorothy, and I love it. So I'll give some background. So as you said, I'm a holistic chiropractor. Chiropractor is a very loose term now, because of course I do a lot of musculoskeletal type work, and really a lot of what I focus on now is a lot of energy balancing and emotional balancing and other work, as far as that's just the big picture. Essentially, I work and balance people's bodies to help support their health in ways that don't include drugs and surgery. So very holistic methods, of course. And one of the things that I do when a person comes into my office in the first visit, we take this long, elaborate history, right? Where I say, okay, tell me what's going on with you. If they say they have headaches, they say that they got this. And we go into all this information about how long it's been going on. Tell me about your diet, your exercise, all these basic things. And then once we got all the standard medical questions out of the way, I asked just like what you asked or just what you mentioned. Tell me about your mother's pregnancy with you. What was life like in her world before you were born? And some people there have very unremarkable stories. They say, oh, it was a normal pregnancy. You know, my mom and dad had gotten married a couple years ago. I was the firstborn of three. You know, they have a very okay story. Others have a more, I don't want to necessarily say a traumatizing story, but I've heard a lot of intense stories where they say, oh, yeah, well, my mom was raped when I was pregnant or when she was pregnant with me. Or they'll say, I've heard stories along the lines of, well, my mom told me that when she was pregnant with me, my dad cheated. And so I never grew up with a father. And so like we hear all these things. And so the emotions and the experiences that mom goes through and during those months of formative development, it impacts the baby on such an energetic frequency level that it's all subconscious. It's all not, none of it is in conscious awareness of even the mother, quite frankly, but it affects the baby. Like we're all vibration, we're all energy. And that baby then is born into a world where they may feel unsafe. The baby can be born into a world where they feel judged. They pick up on the mother's emotions through the entire pregnancy. And so how then they end up manifesting those things as they grow older varies, of course. But those things that the mother experiences is quite impactful, and it just depends on how then that person's constitution. There's so much more to it, of course, how they run with it then afterwards. But all that's very interesting to me as a practitioner when I'm getting that information from somebody. Sometimes it's very telling, you know, like I can't actually think of like one specific example right now, how like their story about how mom's pregnancy directly impacted what they're dealing with right now, but it's definitely happened.
That to me is so amazing because I never really thought about that. I mean, normally we just go about our day. We assume mom and dad were happy. That's why they had us. Like in a normal world when we have both parents. Well, what's normal really?
There is no normal. There's absolutely no normal. If life has taught me anything.
I was whatever. I could tell story after story of what I think normal should be, but and what normal has definitely not been. But you know, to think that that can impact us as even adults, and especially if we don't deal with our shit earlier on, then adults that have never dealt with it turn out to be like walking wounded. And so we have all these people out in the world walking the streets who are half dead inside and really have no even idea why, or popping antidepressants trying to you know just live their life. And it's sad. It's completely sad.
Yes. And speaking of the antidepressants, I find so frequently that antidepressants don't necessarily make you much happier. They make you a little bit less sad, but what they really do is they emotionally castrate you. So you don't experience the highs that life has to offer. You don't necessarily experience the lows, which is great, but you just are this like flat line where, like you said, it's just there's little to engage with there.
And that is so true because I had to take antidepressants once upon a time back when I was in an abusive relationship working for an abusive employer, and life was chaotic is understatement. And you know, my doctor recommended trying it. I said, you have 6 months, actually less than 6 months, to see if this works. And because I hate pills to begin with, and it actually it didn't do anything for me. I really didn't feel nothing. And I'm like, well, I'd rather feel pain than feel nothing. And so I didn't stay on them long. I will admit. And the boyfriend's reaction was, well, I heard antidepressants makes you have a low sex drive. I'm like, well, I'm not touching you anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Yes, I said that on my show. I really did say that on my show. It's my show. It is my birthday.
Say what you want.
I can say what I want. So that tells you the caliber of kind of guy I was with at the time. But I mean, seriously, to me, it just numbs you out. So if you can find a way to deal with it and get healing in other ways, like energetically, like you said, or, you know, different ways that It's so much better. And you're actually dealing with what put you into depression to begin with, instead of just trying to sugarcoat it or just put a Band-Aid on it. Because I feel like antidepressants, and I'm not saying this is for everybody. I'm not a doctor, clearly. But if it helps and it works for you, great. But to me, it's like putting a Band-Aid on an open wound and hoping that it will heal without any like cleaning and cleaning it out and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, I mean, and don't get me wrong, like you've said, certain antidepressants in certain situations are absolutely life-saving. They can be incredibly important and helpful for certain people. I do generally have found that they're meant to be short-term, to help you get through a very difficult time and not stay on them indefinitely without dealing with the issues. Like you said, you're just putting a Band-Aid over it, and it can be very helpful while you're working on the issues so that you can get out of bed, so that you can make your own food, so you can start exercise programs and things like that you didn't have the energy or capacity to do before you had that chemical support.
Right.
But that's not necessarily supposed to be a long-term fix. The other point I wanted to make after you said that is just in the sense of we don't have a clue how our mother's pregnancy impacted us, and we're walking around. So bringing that back then to our own parenting, right? We are still, once again, I said this very earlier here, we're humans raising humans. And unless we're dealing with our shit every single day, in my case, every minute of the day,
I hear you.
We end up getting reactive. We end up, being triggered by our own children. And then we can't necessarily be present in every single moment to necessarily have the quote unquote right response that we would normally or otherwise like to have.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's because of our own BS, belief systems and BS, that I feel like that's what ends up driving our responses to the kids, how we end up being balanced in the trying to support them. The more balanced that we become, the better we can get at that. And that, quite frankly, is a very long, grueling process that takes a lot of patience in yourself, I believe.
Exactly. And like you said, if you don't deal with your stuff, and I think every parent wants to do better for the children than what their parents did. And let's be real, we learned from our parents and our parents learned from their parents. So I think each generation gets quote unquote better, but or learn how to deal with different situations better, let's put it that way, than the generation before. Like my dad was thrown through a door when he was growing up because of something that he did, and then he was made to pay for it afterwards. So that's the generation my dad grew up.
Yeah.
My dad was a little bit better. I mean, when my brother did something wrong, yeah, he probably got what he deserved coming to him. But he wasn't thrown through the door and made to pay for it. So he sure should have better. Often people just don't know better or different, and that is completely that's completely true, Jen. But I'm probably sharing stories on here I shouldn't be, but we all lived. We're all normal, functioning humans. We're good.
There is no normal. We are all abnormal. We are all normal. It's just different variants of normal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Something else you said earlier, that all moms deserve a gold medal. That totally brought something up for me. This is years ago when my third child, so he's 5 now, when he was like a baby, probably a couple months old, I put this thing out on Facebook. I said, I ran, I believe, 6 errands in 3 hours with 3 children. I'm like, I deserved a gold medal at that moment. Like, exactly. I went to the store, I breastfed the child in the car, then changed the poop, then went to the bank, then went to here. And I ran like 6 errands and everything, went to the toy store to pick up something very specific and did not end up getting anything for the kids. I was like, that deserved the gold right there. Like,
exactly.
It's all these little things that add up to the big stuff. And, we often hear this and we often say, things like this on a regular basis. It's all about gratitude. It's all about taking the small wins and giving yourself the acknowledgement when we can. So, any moms out there watching, whenever we're having one of those rough days, just give yourself that acknowledgement when we can. And they'll, give us a little bit of encouragement along the way.
Exactly. Totally.
My husband's watching. Sorry. Not
hi,
that this is awkward. Dorothy says hi.
Dorothy. What funny joke does he have tonight?
She wants to know if you have a funny joke for anyone who's watching tonight. Oh, you actually, you don't want to ask that question. Let's be real.
Oh, but we do.
How what? Oh, I remember that one. How do you know when a dad joke becomes a dad joke? Or when a joke, sorry. How do you know when a joke becomes a dad joke?
I don't know.
When it becomes apparent. She's laughing.
Well, of course, it's hilarious.
Oh, love it. Jen also says,
Yes.
how you're brought up becomes the norm, and feel is the right way. And that's totally
Mhm.
true. And
Yeah.
Jason, we love you. If you want to come take a bow for that joke, come on in.
He left already. It's all good.
and like Jen said, what we were raised as is the new normal. And okay, so just to give a little reference of the pain I went through last July, when the pandemic first hit, and I had to be home with Brady for, I think it was the month of June or something like that. And I was raised completely different than my husband was raised, and his mom was. Her and I are kind of similar, but we were raised, kids were just to be seen and not heard. We were raised, if you said no, if my parents said no the first time, don't ask the second time, and to learn to respect your elders. And so here I am doing my thing, trying to parent how I was taught, and I was on my knees in the hallway, and I was just like, please God, you got to do something. I can't handle this anymore. And I talked to my dad, and I said, Dad, like, how do you do this? And he's just like, well, you can't raise a kid today like I raised you. And my jaw dropped, and I'm like, you, Mr. like on the kid all the time, tells me that I can't raise the kid the same way he raised me. And I was like, okay, so then how do you do it? And it's like, I don't know. Good luck. And I'm just like, but that was like jaw dropping, because I was so used to my dad, who was so strict and so everything, now telling me, just let things go. Not everything, but I had a tendency to sweat the small stuff, but I've come a long way. I really have. I will say that, but there are some days that, like, I don't tolerate disrespect, and I don't tolerate, being mean.
Yeah.
I don't tolerate that. There's certain things that, I've let a lot slip by, but I'm just like, damn, like, then how do you do it if your own parents telling you can't do it? It's just like, that was eye-opening for me.
I don't know. And I also think it's all about perspectives. I had this conversation earlier with Jen, I believe today, that we talked about having different perspectives and being able to deal with kids differently when they're not your own, right? Like, I know when I am either watching a friend's kid or something like that, like, I address them very different than I address my own. I come from a very different place, different perspective of, I'm unattached to the outcome. If they disrespect me, it's not my problem. It's not my quote unquote responsibility. I will show them respect, and I might tell them that's not respectful, that's not kind, like, I'll do all those things, but it doesn't hurt me anyway. Whereas if my own kid does that, I feel like it's a personal attack. Like, what did I do wrong? Yeah. What influence did I have in here that you're treating somebody else like this? And I take more ownership over that, even though technically they're still their own humans. We all make mistakes. We all do stupid stuff. Myself, like, we all do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And kids are no different than us. In fact, they do more stupid stuff because they're kids and they're still learning and they're still growing. So
we won't mention the things they do.
Well, I could. We'd be on the show for hours, Dorothy. We don't have time for that.
I was thinking something recent, but I'll let it go.
You know what? There's too many things that I'm not even sure which one you're talking about.
Oh, right, because I forget about what happened last night. Anyways. Kids, like you said, kids are kids, and I know it's different in the States than it has been here with our kids. Like, we haven't been able to take him anywhere. So he has been almost, I'm not saying blocked up, but he hasn't seen his friends too often, and they haven't been in school. So it's all Zoom school, and it's affecting them mentally, like, huge. And I can't even fathom the mental implications this is going to have on our children for years to come because of what we're dealing with now. And I'd like to know what the government has to say about those putting a plan into place for that, because they put a plan into place for everything else.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You know, it's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Knowing what you mentioned earlier, perhaps as parents, is the knowing that other parents judge, which is too bad. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The comment I was going to make with what you said with the mental health piece on what the kids are dealing with right now is one of my patients actually is close friends with a pediatrician. And she told me, this is, you know, from this person, this relationship, she said the pediatrician would always, she sees a lot of kids with anxiety and behavioral issues and whatnot. And she said all the time, she's not a big pill pusher, especially in young kids. She would refer them out to mental health professionals and therapists and get them that sort of therapy first before even considering putting young kids on medications. And since the pandemic, there's been so much of that coming into not only her office, that the therapists that she's normally referred to are completely booked up. They cannot see any new patients. So she says she's forced now. There's nothing else she can do. So she's prescribing these young kids antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, these really hardcore psychotropic drugs at 8 years old or younger.
Wow.
That under normal circumstances she never would have done. But she feels her hands are tied because the mental health community is overwhelmed and cannot accept any more patients at the time. Like this was months ago, and so hopefully things have shifted on that front now. But like that, just like when I heard that story, my heart just like literally broke in half.
Exactly. That's horrifying. And I look at our kids and I'm like, I just want to take them all to the park and have them go run and play and just be kids is what I want to do. However, there is some medical issues that we've had in the past with our son, and it's so we have to be careful. I don't want to put him in a bubble, but you know, and I don't know. I think we just need to make new friends and have kids over and just be normal is what I think we need to do. But
yeah,
again, whatever normal is.
create your own normal.
Create our own normal, our new normal, because I don't think this is going completely away for a little bit.
No, but creating whatever normal feels right to you and finding your peer group and your support group and your systems that will support whatever normal is to you so that you're not alone is the bottom line.
Exactly. And I totally love that. And I know there is moms groups out there. As somebody who came on the scene only 4 years ago, I know that Brady's Real Mom has gotten into that, but I know I haven't. And I kind of feeling like maybe I should. Because, you know, as being a step parent, it's not the same, but you still have to deal with those things, right? And I think community, well, we know community in business is absolutely essential. So community in parenting, I believe, would be just as essential.
Yes. I've said this several times to different people in different conversations that I've had, that play dates are just as much for the parents as they are for the children. And this is, you know, in younger ages when you had those little play dates, right?
Right.
But getting together and having that sense of community, I really even think it's more important for the parents, because just to understand that we're not in this alone, we are in this together. It's creating that village of support, like I talked about earlier, you know, like just having that sense of community is critical.
And Jen agrees with us. And then we should have our own version of Mom's Night Out.
Yes.
I haven't seen the whole movie, but I've seen bits and parts of it. And maybe we should make our own Mom's Night Out movie.
Which movie?
Well, the one with that comedian, I forget her name. I have pictures in my head.
You're talking about like the Bad Moms movie?
Yeah, the Bad Moms movie.
That was a bit intense, I'll be
Yeah, I was just like, yes. It normalizes
absolutely. I love that comment. It totally normalizes everything that we're experiencing, because, I mean, holy crap, it's crazy stuff. And every now and then we just, you know, with stuff that I've gone through with the boys and everything, it's comforting to know it's not just me. It's not just my kid. Okay.
Yeah.
We're all in it together, and it's all a shit shows.
Exactly. And I think pretty much at this age, they're kind of all the same, except for their own unique personalities.
Of course.
But I think they all get into their own little, I don't know, little spats. Like right now, my stepson is 100%, what do you call it? He plays video games constantly. But again, because he's been stuck in the house with no friends, that's basically what he's doing. And he has friends online that
Right.
he associates with and plays with. So we feel that, yes, we know that maybe it's a little bit too much right now, but what other option do we have to give him? And what's he going to do? Sit in his room and look at the walls? Like, I asked him to read a book. He's got several, but, you know, but I also think that I take into consideration his mental health too, because of, like, as adults, it's been hard for us to process. I can't imagine what it's been like for them.
Right.
So, you know, giving him that opportunity in that space, in the same time, it's trying to minimize the damage, but
Right.
I don't know.
100% agreed.
Yes. Okay, so you have an amazing announcement to make. Look at that look at her eyes. She's like, which one is it? I hear that there is a book coming out. So tell us a little bit about your book, Dr. Christy.
I would love to. Thank you. So the title is called Coordinating the Chaos. I thought that it was quite fitting once I finally came up with the title. So Coordinating the Chaos, and this first one, because this is likely going to be the first of a series, is through birth and burnout. And so this particular book is dedicated and targeted towards the newly postpartum mother who just had a baby and is just trying to figure out her new normal, right? So trying to figure out her sanity, figure out her hormones, figure out how to deal with sleep deprivation, all those early month things. Thank you, Jen. And so also just, you know, dealing with everything that she's experiencing that's new, taking that forward into how to keep her baby holistically healthy in the first year or so of life. So we talk about, you know, what the birth, just kind of like we talked about earlier here tonight, you know, this, how birth impacts the baby's personality and the mother's experience of everything, how it's okay to grieve your birth story if it's not exactly what you wanted it to be, stuff like that. We go into how difficult breastfeeding can be sometimes and how to overcome some of those challenges, sleep, developmental milestones, immune support, how to maybe keep your baby off antibiotics and things along those lines. And so just little things that you might not get from Dr. Google and your medical doctor, just to give alternate perspectives so that, you know, all those challenges that moms tend to face in that first year or so can be supported.
That's amazing. And I'm sure that all mothers out there wish that that book would have been made before now. So when's it officially launching?
I don't know. I wish I could give you the date. I believe I should be seeing the first proof this week. And then assuming that it goes well, then it could be as soon as a week from now. It might more realistically be 2-3 weeks, but probably by the end of July.
And are you taking pre-orders?
I am.
And where can we pre-order?
You can pre-order on my website, ChristyMatusiakDC.com. And I will comment on this later for, because I am doing a promotion for the first 50 individuals who pre-order by, I want to say like July 20th or July 22nd or something in that week. First 50 will get not only an autographed copy, but then of a self-care kit that I'm putting together for people, which
I'm ordering
really
mine tonight. Not
What's
that I
that?
plan on having any more kids, but
you just want
or
this.
kids of my own.
I'll just give you the self-care kit on the side, Dorothy. It's all good.
But I'm ordering that sucker. I did put it in the comments for Dr. Christie's website. I did put it in the comments. So it's there for you lovely
Thanks.
people to sign up now and get those amazing deals, extra deals. And like, I can't wait. Like, I've never done the birthing process and probably never will since I'm 45 today. So, but I can definitely really tune into maybe what life should have been like 45 years ago.
You know, there's no should-haves. This is the thing. Like, So just like I started on this, I'm telling you, Dorothy, today was a day in my world. My head was spinning all day long in this whole parenting things. There are some days where I'm even keeled and I'm grounded and I feel good and strong, like, okay, I got this and I can help support anybody on anything. And then there's days like today where I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I feel like that comes through in the book. So I'm a doctor. I deal with, I work with parents. I work with moms. I work with babies constantly in my office. I've treated and worked with my own for more than 10 years. And I still come from the perspective that it's hard and every person's scenario looks different. There's no one size fits all approach. There's no protocol. Your baby did not come out with a set of instructions. There's no manual. It's do it as you go. It's a choose your own adventure book. And sometimes you choose an adventure that ends you up in a messy place. And you just kind of roll with it.
I love that you said that. And I'm sure, okay, so you have 3 boys, and I'm sure that each boy has his own personality too.
Oh, yes, very much so. They're all very uniquely sensitive in their own ways. And they manifest their sensitivity in different ways. It's so interesting when each of them, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, misbehaves or has an issue, hurts the other one. They're boys. They're hitting each other. They do things, right?
Yeah.
When every one of them does something like that, they make amends in very different ways. One of them acts like nothing's wrong. He didn't do anything wrong, and he just denies, even though I know he's eating himself up inside, but will not admit it. The other one of them will just immediately apologize, own up to it, cuddle up, and then start doing stuff to make up for it, whether it's bring you something or write you a note or like just little things. Like he's just always running there. And then the other one will literally just cry and snuggle you and like force a hug on you to force the forgiveness.
I mean, you're like, get away from me.
And you're just like, the hug is not going to make it better right now. You have to give them space and give them time. And so then it's all about teaching, what you might want in order to make amends, the person that you hurt does not want right now. So you have to have this conversation of respect and boundaries and blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's so fun.
So let me ask you this question, because as adults and in our personal relationships with our spouse or significant others, we use, okay, so I've read the 5 love languages before. Do you think that applies also to your children?
100%. Absolutely. So if you've ever taken the love languages quiz for couples, that same website has a quiz for children to take as well, as long as they're over the age of 9, or at least they're cognitively able to take a quiz. Mm-hmm. So from 9 to 12, they've got a teenager quiz too, but I think from 9 to 12, they have a quiz that the kids can take. Under age 8 or so, they generally just say, observe your children and see where you think they're more apt to lean, or ask them, like, how do you want mommy to show that I love you? And see what their answer is and just kind of gauge based on that. So based on observation and comparatively to the 3 of them, I think we have their languages pegged, but it's also ever changing. So, right. They're growing just like we grow. And right. So all that's changing. But I really believe that the fact that we're aware of it helps the process, as we keep moving through any challenge that we may face, because just having that piece of awareness, like I said, my middle son today, he had a handful of weird stuff happen today, and it was the most beautiful thing. Like he felt bad, so he was bringing me like bowl after fruit, like bowl after bowl of fruit. Like, here, mom, have some cherries now. Here, have some blueberries. The bowl of cherries he brought me, he pitted for me and everything. I'm like, okay, sweet.
Oh my gosh.
It was awesome. And so to me, that's like more of like an act of service kind of thing, or maybe a gift on some level, even though I think his is way more words of affirmation. It's just so interesting to see and watch and kind of interpret your kids' actions when you see it through that lens.
Right. And that is so true, because yes, they can be little hellions, but then once in a while they'll like surprise you, and the stuff that comes out of their mouth is like, whose kid is this? Like, seriously?
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but Brady's vocabulary is very it's a vocabulary that not an average child would have. He's very over average in that. And so I'm just like, where did that come from? you know, because a child of 9 wouldn't say something like that. So, but he's also on YouTube a lot. So I'm sure it comes from that. But it just shocks me at what goes through these kids' minds at any given time.
Yeah. My oldest has gotten quite the vocabulary. Like he says certain things and it not in a negative way. Like he says certain things sometimes just in the words that he uses and the elegant structure of a sentence. I'm just like, that was very well articulated. I'm mildly impressed, actually more than mildly impressed. And that happens actually quite frequently lately.
Yes.
And it's really cool watching them grow. So like you said, you know, in between these insanity moments of chaos, right, that we are coordinating, my pun intended, it's really beautiful every now and then seeing like, okay, I'm not a total failure. Like, because if I were, you probably would be not doing so great. I mean, so.
But I know as parents, we tend to internalize that. And I used to take a lot of things personally. And I'm like, this kid hates me. I'm like, I said to my husband, this kid hates me. Like, there's no way that he likes me. And it was just like, for the first 2 years, it was,
Yeah.
now it's getting better. I mean, it's getting better. And I think it's a balance of me letting go and him realizing I'm not going anywhere and I love him and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that he's healthy, happy, and whole. And from a perspective that I know, and growing along the way, because I don't stay stuck in my stuff, and I grow as a parent, I grow as you know, a leader and everything else like that. So it's challenging, like you said. It's very, very hard. And our friend Jen is laughing at us. Such good kids.
She knows them.
She does. And that's awesome. And like you said, like the way they articulate, sometimes I look at them, I'm like, you're almost 10. That's like something a 20-year-old would say. I'm like, good for you. Like, I'm proud of you. And I think acknowledging when our kids do good, as well as acknowledging when they do bad, but praising them when they do good and acknowledging that goes a long way, because as adults, we want to hear the good stuff. We just don't want to hear the bad stuff that's coming down the pipeline. Right. And kids are the same way, I think.
And just like you said with the love languages, it's acknowledging them in the way that they want to be acknowledged, whether that be through words, whether that be through an act of service. Like, you know, so when my son was bringing me all these things today, like to make up for whatever stuff he had done, like I gave him a couple hugs and I was like, that was really amazing. I really, really appreciate all that. It made me really happy. I also wrote him a note as I was cooking dinner. I wrote him a little note and said, I really appreciate all that you did for me. It meant a lot to me that you thought of me. And Dorothy, I watched him read this note and my heart just exploded with I just watching his little 7.5-year-old brain read each word and go through it. It was adorable. And I could tell it really impacted him in a really positive way. Right. And so I'm certainly far from perfect, but I feel like every little bit that we can try to see them light up in that way is worth it.
Exactly. I totally agree, because I try to put myself into their shoes and say, hey, you know, they did something correct. They should be praised for it. You know, we want that in our own lives.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I have a question. Okay, so about parenting, because if you have one parent that's on one path and another parent that's on another path, and you try to parent together, what's your advice? What's your best advice for that when each parent sees something completely different from the opposite side?
You're rarely going to be exactly aligned on everything, because both parents are two individual people with their own set of parenting experience from their upbringing, bringing their own set of bullshit and belief systems into their, now parenting. Mm-hmm. So it's very rare, if ever possible, that everyone is exactly aligned on that.
Right.
I feel like if there's strong communication, though, and each partner talks to each other about, okay, this is how I want to take things, and this is where you want to take things. Ultimately, I think we want to end up in the same place. Your route's going this way, our route's going this way. And I think sometimes that's okay. Unless it's starkly different, like one parent believes in abuse, the other one doesn't, that's a different deal. Right. But my husband and I parent very differently in a lot of ways. He's a bit more of a strict, rougher disciplinarian. I try very hard to take the gentler approach and focus on communication and respect and love and kindness and all those things, so that they see all that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes my method just does not work. Sometimes his method just does not work. And for them to have both, I think is good in a lot of ways. It provides them different perspective, and they're learning different people, and they're also learning to manipulate us in different ways. And that's human nature, and that's how we grow. So I don't necessarily think that that's a problem to have two people parenting differently, as long as there's communication and that you're walking together on the same path, or at least parallel paths. Like if they're completely opposite directions, that's a different story, and that has to be dealt with.
And I also truly believe that if you do not agree with your spouse in that moment, never call them out on it in that moment.
Agreed.
And if it gets to be too heated, then you just ask them to gently go away from the situation and say, hey, like in kindness and in love, I think you should just go for a walk or something to calm down, so that we can all be on the same page. And that, you know, I'm not saying that happens here, but I've seen it in other situations that it's just like, wow, like you just exploded and vomited all over the child, and the child may not have deserved a little bit, but not all of it. And, you know, and I think it's just good that if you don't agree, to don't bring it in front of the children, I guess is what I'm saying.
100% agreed with that. We have those sorts of situations with relative frequency here and there that, like, I make a mental note, okay, I would have handled that differently, not making a mention of it right now. Later on, okay, so as we were talking later on, when you said XYZ, I would have done this differently. Here's where I'm coming from. So in the future, how would you feel about this? And so then we try to get on the same page. It's all in that consistent communication. That said, sometimes I have broken my own rule on that before, where I feel like sometimes it's healthy for the kids to see the parents work out a conversation in real time.
Yeah.
And that, I believe, is just, it's situational, it's circumstantial, and, you know, it's nothing that one can provide insights on how to do it in each scenario, because everything's going to end up being different in each situation, of course.
Exactly. And it's just, you know, and everything, parenthood is so different each day. Like, not the same problem crops up. So it's just living your best life in those moments, when those moments do come up. I think that's just me.
Yes. Yep.
So, Dr. Christy, we have maybe like 12 minutes left. So what tips or advice would you like to give our listeners out there for living their best life being parents and overcoming all those daily challenges that we all face?
All right. So first one is very ironic, because I believe you not only posted on your live today, but also did your blog on this. It's all about self-care. That is my number one. In fact, in the book, it's the longest chapter. And I think I even mentioned this in the chapter. If your life gets too insane that you can't read any other chapter in this book, read this one, because it not only is the most important for the mom that's, you know, targeted to read this at this time, but it's applicable to every single person ever, no matter what stage of life you're in. That if you aren't taking care of yourself, there's nothing left of you to give to anyone else. So self-care, like you've said yourself, you know, and in things I've read from you recently, it's not selfish. If you don't put yourself first, that's selfish. Because if you're not taking care of you, it's actually selfish. It's like we as moms have this tendency to become like these like sacrificial lambs and these martyrs. Like, I'm going to give up everything that I could possibly want and do everything for the kids. That's not healthy for you. That's not healthy for the kids. That's not healthy for your relationship. So what is it healthy for? What are you doing it for?
Yeah.
And so that's my number one tip across the board, is take care of yourself. And self-care looks different for everyone. And I think it changes with different stages and with what you then need. For me, self-care used to look like going to the gym 4 times a week. Now that's just my norm. And that's not self-care to me anymore. That's just what I do. So now I've upped my game, and I'm like, sorry, gym doesn't count as self-care anymore. Now I need whatever else I need. Right. And that's okay. And even I, who's become so strong about not neglecting my own needs lately, even I still fall into these traps and into the mom guilt from time to time of, all right, well, I'm already spending a ton of time working on my business and doing my book and working with patients and exercising and doing all the things that are important to me. If I have to throw one more quote unquote thing of self-care or something else I want to do in there, that's probably too much. And so it's hard to sometimes navigate that voice that comes in and steps in and tells us that that's not okay to take care of us. But it looks different every day, every week, every month, and every stage along the way. So as far as tips are concerned, that's my number one, is make sure that your cup is filled. Because if your cup is not filled, you're going to be more reactive, less patient, and end up not showing up in the way that you want to for your kids in the first place. So number two, I would actually say, is really evaluate all the roles that we play in life. Because I feel like, at least for me, that's what gets really overwhelming. You mentioned Zoom schooling. Like, rarely in history have parents ever had to be parent, cook, maid, all the other things that we do, like spouse, employee, teacher, all at the same time. And we've all had to do it. And the expectations are strongly unrealistic. And I think, myself included, we've put ourselves in these situations where we expect to not only be it all, but be it all with grace and ease and come across like we've got it all together. And we just don't, because it's really hard to be everything to everyone, and it's not really appropriate. So I just say, evaluate the roles that you play and where you want to prioritize things. And those priorities might look different every day. Like, okay, today I'm going to work a bit harder on my business and everything else is going to be on pause. Today, I'm going to focus more on just being mom and that's it, and doing maybe a little laundry or something. Today, we're going to work more on this. And balance is an illusion. But over time, I think we all develop our own sense of balance.
You should be David Copperfield.
Oh, yeah. If only that's how it worked.
Only somebody can do the laundry and scrub the toilet. That would be amazing. Jude Cleaver, I am not.
I have been starting to get my oldest to do his own laundry. It's creeping in there.
I've asked to at least put his plate from the table on top of the counter and put water in the fridge. Balance is an illusion. That's right. I've asked for those things, and sometimes it happens, and sometimes it doesn't.
Hello,
I'm there. Are you there? You're
I don't
frozen.
know if anybody can hear or see me, but Dorothy's gone on my end.
Oh, I'm here. You're frozen, my dear.
Hello.
Hello. You're
Hello?
frozen.
Are you there? Okay,
I'm
you
here.
were frozen on my end.
Oh,
yep,
you're frozen on my end.
Oh, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Okay. Well, I can hear you. You're
Okay.
frozen. You've got this amazing pause. I got to take a picture of that.
Oh, dear God, don't.
Oh, we will, because that's part of the charm. I'm taking. Oops. Crap. What the heck? New phone. You're still frozen, but that's okay.
I'm still frozen? Okay. Well, at least you can hear me. You were frozen on my end for a minute, so.
Sorry. It's lovely internet.
It happens.
Yes.
So I don't remember what you were starting to say when the internet did its thing.
I'm not sure. Jen had mentioned that balance is an illusion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, balance looks different. We have this, I think, illusion of balance, meaning that like all plates are exactly even at one time. I think balance is really just juggling different balls, and different balls are in the air other times you're holding them. They're all over the place.
That's a good analogy. I visualize like one of those jugglers with all the balls up in the air, and we're trying not to drop one of the balls. And it's like one of our kids' life could be dependent on it if we drop one of those balls. But that's, again, an illusion. Because, if we drop the ball, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay.
They bounce, usually.
Yeah.
It's not like you're
Uh-oh. Are you still there, Dr. Christy?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. I can see and hear you, so.
Oh, okay. It's like your mouth. Oh, you're like moving slowly.
Sorry.
Oh, there
I
you
wonder
go.
how this is going to actually turn out.
No, it's good. You're good now. I can see you. I can.
Okay.
Something is awesome.
So, as far as last tips are concerned, and this is something I'm working on every day, is gratitude.
That's good.
Every day trying to come up with something not only am I grateful for in my own world, in my own life, but about each kid and who they are and what they're bringing to the world. And I will say in some certain situations, those are more difficult than others. And it's important to remind ourselves of that, and then to also pay it forward and remind them of the amazing creatures they're turning out to be.
Exactly. Because they are amazing. And for moms that natural birth, they come from them. So of course they're going to be amazing. And for people in my situation where they didn't come from me, but I still am trying to, in a positive way, mold and impact and create little humans that are going to grow up to be strong young men that are decent human beings and know how to treat a woman right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really believe that step parents can oftentimes even be more influential sometimes, because they don't have necessarily they have a different relationship. Yeah. And so they are, I would say that they respect you in a different way. They push different boundaries. I don't know. I obviously don't have that same relationship, so I can't tangibly put words to it. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it's different, and I feel like you can have just a sometimes more impactful influence.
Right. Yeah, I would say yes. I know as he's getting older, it's definitely different than when I first met him when he was 5.
Yeah.
And again, he was going through a lot. I mean, the separation and things from his parents, and then finding, a new person on the scene that wasn't going away, and just wanting to spend time with Dad. And now it's like, oh yeah, she's definitely not going anywhere after 4 years, so I'm stuck with her. So I guess I can lay off being hard on her all the time too. Yeah, I need lunch, I need dinner, and you should get a HelloFresh box because I don't like your cooking.
Yeah.
True story, my friends. And I just smiled with grace as in my mind, atomic bombs were going off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the situation. Depending on what state we are in at any given time, we will handle that differently, right? Yeah. I don't know. I remember exactly how you handled that in your moment. You said you just sat there and smiled. Good for you. My son, we were coming home from school one day, and he asked for, whatever lunch. I think he asked for like lentil soup that we get from Trader Joe's. And I said, you know what? I forgot to buy that this week. I'm sorry, we don't have any. And he says, it like the world ended. And I can't believe you didn't buy that. You never get me anything that I want. You're always making terrible food. I was like, nope, that's not true. And I can't remember, because this conversation lasted for longer than just the walk home. Like, it started there, and I think I was centered in a good place, and I handled it well at that point. And then we got home, and then I'm done. Now I lost it. Don't you dare tell me that I don't do anything for you, because all I do is stuff for you. And yeah, it was complicated. But I don't know.
My husband was on the other end of that deal this weekend, and he looked at me. He goes, "Did you just hear what he said?" I said, "Yeah. Welcome to my world, baby. Welcome to my world." And he just laughed. I was sitting went out to go to the bathroom, and was laughing in the bathroom because I'm like, mm-hmm. You get it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every now and then we make stuff, and they devour it, and then like we make something very, very similar the next day, and it's just no, we don't like it. It's like you ate it 2 days ago, right?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Christy, it was an absolute pleasure having you on our show today, and thank you to our wonderful, amazing guests that are here live and coming on the replay. We want to thank you and bless you, and don't forget to go pre-order Dr. Christy's book on her website, which I put in the comments. And if you want to say that one more time, because I'm afraid to pronounce your last name, I don't get it wrong.
It's Christy Matusiak, DC.com.
Thank you. And with that, you guys have an amazing night, and stay tuned, because in 15 minutes we're having an amazing show, a fun show with Dr. Christy, Jen Sahari, and myself on my Facebook page, Jen's LinkedIn page, and probably Jen's YouTube page, I think, too, YouTube channel. And you don't want to miss that because it's going to be fun. Wait till I see what I have planned with these ladies.
Oh, boy. Now I'm getting a little scared.
You should be. With that, love you people. Have a good night.
Thanks, Dorothy.
Yeah.